Hello there. In this video, we're going to move on to the next exercise in the Rustlings exercises. So what we've got now is another problem with variables, actually. Let me take a look first at the left-hand side here. So we've got an error E0283, type annotations needed. And this is an error that's identified where there's let x and then semicolon to end the statement. But then later on, if x equals 10, that type must be known at this point. And there's a note, cannot satisfy the partial equals I32. I believe that's a trait. And note, integer implements partial x with some generic trait, I guess. Consider giving x an explicit type. Let x have some whatever type. Consider swapping the equality. I don't think that swapping the equality would actually solve the problem here, but okay. For more information about this error, you can check the cargo docs. Actually, why don't we do that as a matter of course here? We got compiler, Rust, C, explain, E0283. Okay, nice. So we got let hello.chars.rev.collect mapped into a vector of whatever type. We can see a self-contained example below, struct foo impl into u32. You know what? I have worked with structs and impls, but I don't want us to start here and now with that. I don't see a really simple example, so I kind of just want to jump into showing what will fix this and what won't fix this. So by default here, I don't think that actually specifying the type alone will work because it needs to evaluate against a value. Let's see if that actually works. I don't think that that's the right thing to do. No, yeah. So it's used here but isn't initialized. I think that the previous error was really just saying it needs to have a value, or sorry, needs to have a type because it didn't. And now it has a type, but it still needs to have a value to do this comparison. Now, we don't have to include an explicit type, actually, but we do need to put a value in that will imply a type. So we could put in 42, and that solves this particular problem. Now, I think you can actually declare variables and not use them. No? Oh, okay, you still have to define a type even if you haven't done anything with it. I guess that makes sense. Because with the let x be assigned the value of 42, it's able to infer an integer type from that. Whereas if I just have let y with no type, it doesn't know what that is. And so it's not defined according to the compiler. Okay, I'm actually fine with this. This is a-okay. So we didn't even really read through the entire example, did we? What's actually going to go on here is it's going to check if x is equal to 10, then print x is 10, otherwise print x is not 10. So if we change the answer here, then on the left-hand side it should say x is 10. There we go, x is 10. So that's pretty easy. Now, let's also take a look at what the hint was. I'm just curious. So the hint, this is a more involved hint, I guess. The compiler message is saying that Rust can't infer the type that the variable binding x has with what is given here. Makes sense. What happens if you annotate the first line in the main function with a type annotation? What if you give it x a value? What if you do both? I guess we needed to do both, didn't we? But actually specifying the value alone was enough for what we did. What type should x be anyway? I mean, an integer, either a U32. We should check that out, actually. My assumption here is that in the comparison with 10 that it's a U32. Let's see if it's still good. Although I do think the default type is technically like an I32, if I'm not mistaken, for just general integers. Yeah, okay. So the compiler, I guess, is figuring out that this 10 should be something that matches with this 10 up here. Good to know. Oh, did we actually finish reading the hint, though? What's the last one? What if x is the same type as 10? What if it's a different type? So if it's a different type, we should get an error. But I think that the compiler is figuring out for us how to get the matching integer type, whether it's an I32 or a U32. And probably, I don't see why it wouldn't also figure out things like, what if it was an I64? Let's try that. Still works. So the compiler's pretty smart for us, being able to figure out that that 10 down here is going to have to match whatever this type is, and there's no ambiguity or contradictions, and so the compiler's happy with this. It will infer the type. Now, I believe we should also take the opportunity to look at the solutions. So this is for variables, and this is variables2.rs. So what did they do? The easiest way to fix the compiler error is to initialize the variable x by setting its value to an integer. Rust infers its type as i32, which is the default type for integers. But we can force a different type from the default i32 by adding a type annotation such as let x equals u8 equals 42 is also fine. And this is just the same code as before. So we pretty much nailed the general approach and got confirmation that it's i32 that is the default type in Rust. So I think that's it for this example, and I'll catch you in the next video for Rustlings. Take care.